Every road trip begins with a promise of adventure, a whisper of freedom echoing through the open highway. But what if that promise could turn into your worst nightmare in the blink of an eye? What if the journey you've been looking forward to becomes the last trip you'll ever take? I've spent years collecting stories that will make your blood run cold. Tales that prove how quickly a simple drive can transform into a fight for survival. These aren't Hollywood scripts or fabricated horror. These are real experiences from real people who never expected their routine travels to become life-altering nightmares. Each story is a stark reminder that danger doesn't announce itself. It creeps up silently, waiting in the shadows of seemingly innocent moments. Look, I know you're scrolling. I know you're thinking this is just another random video. But I'm telling you right now, what you're about to hear will change the way you look at every single road trip you'll ever take. These stories aren't just about fear. They're about survival, about those split-second decisions that stand between life and death. I've dedicated countless hours tracking down these accounts, verifying every detail, speaking to survivors who were willing to relive their most terrifying moments just to warn others. And now, I'm bringing their stories to you. Unfiltered, uncut, and absolutely bone-chilling. But here's the thing. These stories save lives. Every single person who watches and learns from these experiences increases their chances of survival. Every share, every view could be the difference between someone walking away from a potentially deadly situation or becoming another statistic. If you're someone who values your life, if you're someone who wants to be prepared, if you're someone who believes knowledge is the ultimate protection, then you need to do three things right now. First, watch this entire video, every single minute. Second, share this with every single person you know who travels, your friends, your family, your colleagues. And third, and this is crucial, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because the next story could be the one that saves your life or the life of someone you love. This isn't just content. This is a lifeline. Are you ready to listen? Let's dive into our first story, a nightmare that proves how quickly a fun college road trip can turn into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. This is the story of Deltopia, a day that was supposed to be about celebration, friendship, and making memories. Instead, it became a chilling encounter with a predator who would stop at nothing to terrorize a group of friends. I need to provide some context so the story makes sense. My friend group consisted of 5 college guys from a smaller UC campus in California. Most big universities have these massive party days. Berkeley has Cal Day, Santa Barbara has Deltopia. It's essentially a crazy all-day celebration where students from all over converge on one campus. My friends had never really been part of these wild festivities, but this year was different. It was their senior year, and they decided to throw caution to the wind and experience Deltopia. The group consisted of Hunter, who was driving, along with Damon, Benjamin, and Armin. They were all above 6 feet tall, which made the cramped car ride slightly uncomfortable, but the excitement of the trip kept their spirits high. Hunter's sister, a junior at UCSB, had agreed to let them crash at her apartment, a golden ticket during the notoriously packed Deltopia weekend. But there was one wild card in this story. A guy named Amir. He wasn't exactly a friend, more like a persistent hanger-on who always managed to insert himself into social situations, the kind of person who constantly seeks validation and makes every conversation about himself. None of the guys particularly liked Amir, but he had somehow heard about their trip and decided to invite himself along. The first red flag came when Amir mysteriously appeared at the liquor store where the group was buying alcohol. He just stood there on the curb, hands in his pockets, as if he'd been waiting for them. No explanation, no prior communication, just suddenly present. When they returned to Hunter's sister's apartment, Amir brazenly walked in and declared he was staying, catching everyone off guard. Hunter was furious. He immediately confronted Amir, telling him to leave and making it clear that he wasn't welcome. Amir argued and pleaded, but eventually left, or so they thought. What they didn't realize was that Amir had been tracking Hunter's location, essentially, stalking them the entire time. The next day, during the Deltopia celebrations, one of their friends discovered that Amir's location was essentially right on top of them. When they noticed this, the location dot quickly moved away, as if Amir had been watching them from a nearby car. It was bizarre, but they laughed it off, dismissing it as Amir's typical weird behavior. But then came the night that changed everything. In the middle of the night, the narrator was awakened by the sound of shattering glass. Investigating alone, he discovered the sliding glass door had been smashed with a rock. As he moved through the apartment, he noticed the closet door handle moving slightly. His heart racing, he was about to open the closet when something stopped him. Instead, he woke up Hunter. Together they approached the living room, and that's when Hunter pulled a massive kitchen knife out of the closet. Amir had been hiding behind the door, presumably with violent intentions. If the narrator had opened that closet alone, he might not have survived. They immediately called the police, but without concrete evidence, there wasn't much that could be done. Amir had already blocked all of their phone numbers, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. The most terrifying part? Amir knew where they all lived. The narrator admits that even while telling this story, he's still afraid of what Amir might do next. This story is more than just a creepy encounter. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones hiding in plain sight. The people you know, who seem harmless until suddenly, they're not. What would you have done in this situation? How do you protect yourself from someone who seems to have no boundaries? Let's dive into our second story. A chilling encounter that proves sometimes the most dangerous predators wear the most convincing disguises. This is a story of a military road trip that came dangerously close to becoming a nightmare, saved only by a split-second decision and a seemingly insignificant detail. It was late April 1996, and I had just finished basic training, assigned to an airbase in San Angelo, Texas. At 24 years old, I was eager to put distance between myself and my Mississippi roots. Joining the military was my ticket to a new life. My closest friends on base were Sebas and Kay, and we were inseparable. That warm weekend in early April, we decided to break the monotony of base life with a spontaneous road trip to Austin. Kay offered to drive her SUV, and we hit the road that afternoon, 3 young military personnel looking for a bit of adventure. About an hour into our journey, something felt off. Sebas was the first to notice a dark-colored Tahoe that seemed to be trailing us a little too closely. At first, it seemed like nothing, just another vehicle on the highway. But then Kay started changing lanes deliberately, and the SUV mirrored her every move. When the vehicle finally put its lights on, we assumed it was a routine traffic stop. But from the moment the driver stepped out, everything felt wrong. This was no ordinary police officer. He was dressed in all-black tactical gear, with only a cryptic patch on his arm that we couldn't quite read. Instead of approaching the driver's window like a normal officer would, he stood behind the car, meticulously examining everything. Our luggage, Kay's bumper stickers, the license plate. I've always been observant. It's part of my military training, to process information quickly. And something about this entire scenario screamed wrong. The way he moved, the way he studied our vehicle. It was more like a predator analyzing its prey than a law enforcement officer doing a routine stop. Sebas rolled down the window and asked if there was a problem. The officer sidestepped the question, demanding Kay's license and registration. He then retreated to his vehicle for an unusually long time. When he finally returned, he wasn't alone. 2 more men emerged from the Tahoe, and I could feel my heart rate climbing. The twist came when the officer asked Kay if her father was in the military. Kay laughed and corrected him, explaining that she was military and so were Sebas and I. The moment those words left her mouth, everything changed. The officer's body language stiffened. He glanced back at his companions, and there was this pregnant moment of absolute tension. Then, as quickly as the stop had begun, it was over. The officer handed back Kay's license, mumbled something about a warning, and they all disappeared as fast as they had appeared. We were stunned. Sebas couldn't stop talking about how those weren't real officers and how something sinister was brewing. But we were young, alive, and the excitement of Austin pushed the encounter to the back of our minds. Until a week later, I was in the rec room with Sebas when a local news story stopped us cold. A man and woman had been found murdered in a ditch, just outside San Angelo. The abandoned vehicle at the scene? A black Tahoe that had been reported stolen months earlier from several states away. In that moment, we realized how close we had come to becoming another tragic statistic. The only thing that had saved us was Kay's military bumper sticker, something that had made those men hesitate. We immediately went to the police, reporting every detail of our encounter. Part of me still feels a surge of guilt for not reporting it immediately. But more than that, I can't shake the haunting thought of how easily it could have been us in that ditch. This isn't just a story about a suspicious traffic stop. This is a story about predators who hunt in plain sight, who look for the most vulnerable targets. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous hunters are the ones who know exactly how to blend in. What would you have done? How do you recognize a threat before it becomes real? Remember, your survival often depends on that split second of intuition, that moment when something feels fundamentally wrong. Let's dive into our third story, a cautionary tale that proves a moment of vulnerability can unravel your entire life. This is a story about a solo road trip that turned into a calculated assault that would haunt its victim for months, if not years to come. About 10 years ago, I embarked on what should have been a simple road trip from West Paterson, New Jersey to Fort Worth, Texas. It was a journey to visit my parents, a trip long overdue, as I'd moved away years earlier and hadn't been back much since. The anticipation of seeing family kept my spirits high as I drove through the vast, seemingly endless landscapes of Middle America. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, maybe Arkansas, maybe the edge of Oklahoma, my car began to act up. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping the issue would magically resolve itself. But soon I had no choice but to pull over. The surroundings were desolate. Nothing but trees, open fields, and a long, empty road behind me. I popped the hood, pretending to know what I was doing, killing time while secretly dreading the thought of calling AIA and getting charged an arm and a leg. A few minutes later, a nondescript white pickup truck pulled up behind me. The driver was a man in his mid-30s, worn down in a way that made him seem older. He had curly hair and an uneven beard that looked like it hadn't seen a trim in years. Interestingly, he looked almost like an older version of me. Same build, same height, same hair color, just less well-groomed. He approached slowly, giving my car a once-over. Before I could even speak, he was already leaning over the engine, assuming I needed help. He claimed to be a mechanic and started examining the car with what seemed like genuine expertise. When he muttered something about needing a compression tester and suggested his mechanic friend might bring one over, I had no reason to be suspicious. Then came the moment that would change everything. He asked to borrow my phone, explaining his was dead. Without a second thought, I handed it over. In almost the same motion, he pulled out a gun. The entire interaction was surreally calm, as if we were going through some practiced routine. He had me sit on the shoulder, rifled through my pockets, took my wallet and backpack, and even had me show him the password to my phone. And just like that, he was gone. I was livid, more angry than I'd ever been in my life, but I had no idea that the robbery was just the beginning of my nightmare. 6 months later, the real horror began. It started with a letter from a bank I didn't recognize, thanking me for opening a new line of credit. I thought it was junk mail at first. Then came another letter from Best Buy, showing a credit card I'd supposedly opened with over $1,000 in charges from a random town in Tennessee. That's when it hit me. My Social Security card had been in my wallet when I was robbed. The man now had everything he needed to become me. The next month was a living hell. My credit report became a disaster zone. Hard inquiries, new cards, balances I never spent. It felt like every day brought a new nightmare. I filed reports with the FTC, placed fraud alerts on all credit bureaus, and even froze my credit. I went to the police, called local departments, did everything by the book. But it wasn't enough. Things escalated quickly. My health insurance provider called to inform me that someone had received emergency care under my name at a hospital in Georgia. These weren't just billing issues. These were records that could potentially destroy my entire life. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I transformed my entire lifestyle, spending every free moment trying to track down the perpetrator. I set up Google alerts for my name, constantly checked my credit report, scanned forums, and dug through social media. One night, on a whim, I started checking Craigslist, focusing on cities tied to the fraud. And then, a breakthrough. Listing in Jackson, Tennessee caught my eye. The used power tools and miscellaneous items perfectly matched the charges on the stolen Best Buy card. I responded to the listing carefully, not wanting to spook the seller. Instead of confronting him directly, I contacted the local police department and provided them with all the information. The next day, the seller revealed he was driving a red pickup truck. The police tracked him down, and during a pursuit he lost control and crashed into a ditch. When questioned, he quickly folded, admitting he didn't know where the items had come from and that a friend had given them to him. The truth was even more shocking. It wasn't just one person. There were 3 of them. They had been targeting travelers and isolated drivers across multiple interstate corridors, primarily in the South. Eventually, all 3 were caught, charged, and put in jail. Justice was served, but the experience changed me forever. This isn't just a story about a robbery. This is a stark reminder of how quickly your entire life can be stolen. Not just your possessions, but your very identity. One moment of vulnerability, one split-second decision to trust a stranger, can unravel everything you've built. What would you do if your entire life was suddenly hijacked? How can you protect yourself from becoming the next victim? Remember, in today's world, your identity is your most valuable possession. And some predators are waiting for just one moment of weakness. Let's dive into our final story. A chilling tale that will make you think twice about every seemingly innocent encounter on the road. This is a story about how a moment of compassion can lead you into the darkest depths of human depravity. A nightmare that began with what seemed like a simple act of kindness. I've always considered myself a good person, the type who believes in helping others, especially when someone looks like they're in genuine trouble. My wife calls it my fatal flaw, that I can't just drive past someone who seems to need help. This personality trait had served me well most of my life, but on one particular road trip through the desolate highways of the Southwest, it would come closer to destroying everything I held dear. It was a blistering summer day, the kind where the heat shimmers off the asphalt and turns the horizon into a wavering mirage. I was driving from Phoenix to Los Angeles, a route I'd taken dozens of times for work. The stretch between Phoenix and the California border is nothing but endless desert. Miles of nothing but rocks, cacti, and the occasional abandoned gas station. About 2 hours into my journey, I saw her, a woman standing by the side of the road looking distressed. Her car was barely visible, a small sedan half hidden behind a rocky outcropping. In the brutal Arizona heat, anyone would be in serious trouble. I'm not going to lie. Something felt off from the moment I pulled over. She was too calm, too composed for someone supposedly stranded in the middle of the desert. Her clothes were immaculate, her hair perfectly styled. But desperation can make people do strange things, and the heat was punishing. "Need some help?" I called out. She smiled. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The next few moments happened so quickly, yet felt like an eternity. She asked if I could help her push her car, which was just around the rock formation. Something inside me screamed to drive away, but I ignored my instincts. Big mistake. As we walked around the rocks, I realized there was no car, no broken-down vehicle, no sign of any mechanical trouble. Just rocks, sand, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. That's when I felt the cold metal press against my back. "Keep walking," a male voice said from behind me. The woman continued to smile that same emotionless smile. What unfolded next was a meticulously planned ambush. They weren't just looking to rob me. They were hunting. I learned later they were part of a sophisticated ring that targeted solo travelers, particularly those who worked in tech or carried valuable equipment. They knew exactly who I was. They knew my work schedule, my route, even details about my family. They had been tracking me for weeks, studying my patterns, waiting for the perfect moment of vulnerability. The next 48 hours became a blur of terror. They didn't just want my possessions. They wanted to completely dismantle my life. They took my work laptop with years of proprietary software development, copies of my passport, access to my company's internal networks. The financial and professional damage would take years to repair. What haunts me most is how close they were to completely destroying everything. My family, my career, my entire identity, all hanging by a thread because I decided to be a good Samaritan that day. Law enforcement eventually caught up with the group, discovering they were part of a larger criminal network that had been operating across multiple states. They had targeted dozens of professionals, carefully selecting victims who were traveling alone and were likely to have valuable information or equipment. But the psychological damage was already done. I stopped taking road trips. I stopped trusting strangers. Every hitchhiker, every person looking like they need help, became a potential threat. This isn't just a story about a road trip gone wrong. This is a warning about the predators who hunt in plain sight, who use our humanity, our compassion against us. They know that good people will stop to help, and they're waiting. What would you do if your moment of kindness became your greatest vulnerability? How do you balance human compassion with personal safety? Remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who know exactly how to appear helpless. You've just heard 4 spine-chilling stories that prove one terrifying truth. The road can become your worst nightmare in an instant. But here's the real question. Are you going to learn from these stories or become another statistic? Look, I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to every single person who values their life, their safety, their future. These aren't just stories. These are warning signals. Verified fears exists for one reason, and one reason only: to keep you alive. Every single video I create is a lifeline, a blueprint for survival in a world that's become increasingly unpredictable and dangerous. But here's the brutal truth. A lifeline only works if you're connected to it. Right now, 90% of you watching have not subscribed to this channel. Let that sink in. 90% of you are willing to consume this life-saving content without taking the most basic step to ensure you never miss a crucial survival tip. Subscribe now. But I'm not asking you to just hit that subscribe button. I want you to treat this as a mission. Subscribe with notifications on. Every second could save your life. Share this video with everyone you care about. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, your colleagues. Comment below with the most terrifying road trip experience you've heard or experienced. This isn't about views. This isn't about YouTube metrics. This is about survival. Each story you've heard today could have ended in tragedy. The only difference between life and death was awareness, preparation, knowledge. Verified Fears is your training ground, your survival manual, your early warning system. If you walk away from this video without subscribing, you're not just ignoring a channel, you're ignoring a potential lifeline. One click, one subscription, potentially one life saved. Are you ready to become a survivor, or will you remain a potential victim? The choice is yours. Subscribe now